And in some ways, we might feel a little guilty, right, for laughing in this moment
Yes.
and for all the things that are going on, right? And I think that's a part of it is that learning that it's okay to have that moment of release. So that is so important to help us move forward, even when we have really traumatic things that are happening around us that we can't control. The other thing that I've learned from Alan is to like that everything will be okay in the end, but also to take a moment to slow down. I mean, I think that I sometimes feel like I'm on that hamster wheel running and like, where am I running to? You know?
What if your most meaningful work comes in your third act? Sky Bergman spent 30 years teaching photography before stepping fully into documentary filmmaking. And now her documentaries are heading to, or already on, PBS. They're winning awards and bringing generations of people into conversation with each other. I love that about her work. And today we're going to be talking about her newest documentary featuring Allen Klein. He is known as the Jollytologist. But we're also going to be talking about reinvention, legacy, and really why it's never too late to create something that connects people in a powerful way. So I'm really excited for this conversation. Sky, thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. You lighten my day every time I see you on my feed, so I'm happy to be part of this.
Ah, that makes me happy. Thank you. So, well, let's just start off with this man, Alan Klein, who I just love. What drew you to Alan Klein as a subject for a documentary?
Well, actually, I think that he kind of found me through a mutual friend. And the woman that did our audio descriptions for Lives Well Lived, my first film, knew Alan and knew me and thought Alan was had such an amazing story that he really needed to have a film made about his life. And so she reached out to me and said, "Can I connect the two of you?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'm already working on two other films. I don't know if I can do this." And I had a conversation with Alan and I just adored him. He was wonderful and I just, my
He is
goodness, he
adorable.
is
I mean,
amazing. Yeah. You can't help but leave the conversation with him with a smile. But I said to him, I'm so busy and I just don't think I can take on another project because I don't want to do something where I can't just put my whole self into it. I said, but I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. And about a month went by, and he had looked at other, filmmakers and met with them. And then he said he had a call with me, and he said, "Look, I really want to work with you after meeting with all these other filmmakers, and I will wait until you have the time to work with me." And I just thought, okay, his story is so compelling and it's so important to talk about the healing power of humor and getting through challenging and difficult times with laughter and humor. And boy, if we don't need that now more than ever, it's helped me in the last 2 years that I've worked on the film. So I'm so grateful that he persisted and that it worked out. And it's become my favorite project of all the ones that I'm working on,
you're kidding. Oh
ironically.
my gosh. Honestly, so I got to see a sneak peek of the film as you've got it to the finishing point right now. And my thought about it was what a gift this is right now with everything that's going on in the world. And, I talk a lot about playfulness and how to be playful as we age and just living as an adult. It's really hard. But it's just felt even harder lately and harder to talk about play and playfulness in the middle of the climate that we're in. So when I saw this post about this film that you're doing about him, it just immediately I was like, I need to talk to him. I need to talk to Sky. And then getting to see the film, can I just tell you, I literally I cried, I laughed. It was all the things. Like I'm tearing up right now thinking about some of it. Wow, the idea that we can use humor to get through the tough stuff. I mean, I guess that's not a new idea, right?
No,
But
and I think that when I did my last film, Lives Well Lived, where I interviewed 40 people who were 75 and older, living very full lives, but also, it was a film about their words of wisdom, but also about their stories. And many of them lived through World War II, through really traumatic and difficult moments. And I really tried, even in that film, very consciously to make sure that in each of their stories, there were three things that were present: a word of wisdom, which is why I started the project, their stories, right, at a poignant moment, and then humor, because I felt like we need that levity, we need that moment to let go. And I will never forget that. One of the people in the film, Marion Wolf, who came over on the very first Kinder transport from Vienna, Austria, she was saved, and she was Jewish, and she was saved because of that. And I said to her, how do you get through some of these things? She had to leave her mom behind in Austria. She was 8 years old. And she said humor and laughter. And that stuck with me. And then, so I guess, this must be something that I have to learn and deal with because it's coming up again with Alan. But I really consciously made that decision of like, here are some really hard stories that we're talking about, but we need some humor so that we don't just, we have to learn to lighten up a little bit, even in the toughest of times. And so I think that that's something that is a good lesson for all of us, especially right now. And in some ways, we might feel a little guilty, right, for laughing in this moment
Yes.
and for all the things that are going on, right? And I think that's a part of it, is that learning that it's okay to have that moment of release. That is so important to help us move forward, even when we have really traumatic things that are happening around us that we can't control. Remember, and then this is something that I learned from Alan, but also from my previous film, from Lives Well Lived. Our attitude is really the only thing that we have control over. And if we can laugh and have a little more levity, that joy spreads to other people. And that kindness and if we could do a little bit more of that, how much better would the world be right now if we were just kinder and laugh with each other a little bit more?
Amen. Amen. I'm thinking back to having seen Lives Well Lived and some of the things that are still with me since I watched it for our first interview, Sky. The things that stuck with me is you talk to all these people who've lived long lives and are thriving and everything, and what seemed to be the commonality amongst all of them was this ability to tap into humor. And also, I am I wrong in thinking that all of them seem to keep talking about curiosity?
Yeah, no, I think that that's true. And I think the other big thing, which kind of goes with curiosity, is having a sense of purpose. No matter what our
Mm.
age, we need to have a sense of purpose. And I think that kind of goes along with being curious and wanting to continue to learn more, wanting to give back in some way. I think that's very much tied with having that sense of purpose, that we have a reason for being. And that curiosity is a big part of it, that we want to keep learning.
Yeah, yeah. What's was there anything about Alan that surprised you while you were making the film?
That is a good question. I just think the more that I worked with him, the more that I grew so fond of him. And I feel like he's one of my best friends now. I mean, we
Oh,
talk a couple of times a week at least on Zoom. And I really look forward to our conversations. I mean, even if we're talking about the most mundane things, I still feel like my life is so enriched just having him as part of my friend group. And I just think about things in a little bit of a different way. He talks about seeing faces in odd places. And funny enough, my partner Jeff does the same thing. He makes a bagel every day for breakfast and photographs it as a face. I mean, and he's always looking for faces in odd places. And so now I mean, I did that a little bit, but I do that very consciously now. And I think of Alan when I'm doing that, and it just brings a smile to my
he's
face.
got
Something
me thinking
so,
about it
yeah.
too.
I mean, it's
Yes,
something so simple, right? But
yeah.
it just like you see that and you smile, and just how much lighter is your day because of that. And so I guess, is there anything that surprised me about working with him? Just how much he's influenced, my everyday overall well-being.
Ah, there's something about he really does. He carries that energy with him. I remember getting off of the interview with him and feeling like, just this sense of everything's going to be okay. And
Yeah, right.
I imagine that must affect if you're, on set, that working with somebody like that must change the energy of the room and working.
Yeah, well, I will tell you when we did two interviews, and the second interview, before we started the interview, we kind of took a moment, and he just did this like whole thing about, okay, let's just take a moment and let's set the stage for today, and this is going to be a great day. And just the way he set everything up for that day, I know it was a better day because of this. Because I think that the other thing that I've learned from Alan is to like that everything will be okay in the end, but also to take a moment to slow down. I mean, I think that I sometimes feel like I'm on that hamster wheel running, and like, where am I running to? I don't know why, but just that moment kind of to reset and ground ourselves, I think made such a difference in that day. And so I that is just such a wonderful gift that he has given me. I mean, I was doing that a little bit before, but it was so intentional that day that it really left an imprint on me.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that strikes me about your work is that your films consistently bring generations into conversation.
Mhm.
And we talked about this the first time you were on the podcast, but let's revisit it now because it's been some time. Why does that matter to you, and why does it continue to matter to you?
Well, I feel like we live in such an age segregated world, and I see it. I mean, I teach at a university, so I'm still I have 4 more classes to go. I'm almost done, but I'm still in that environment, and I feel like the world is suffering as a result of not bringing generations together. I was lucky that I grew up in an intergenerational household. My great grandmother lived with us. We were 4 generations: my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mom, and me. So
Wow.
it was a really amazing childhood that I had no idea how amazing it was, because when you're living it, you don't know until you're outside of it. But I see the difference when we do these intergenerational projects. I'm doing intergenerational projects across the country with the Lives Well Lived Generations project, and where I see older adults and students coming together and getting to know each other, and spending that time together, and realizing this is like a by far the most common comment that comes out of those projects is that the students and the older adults realize that they have far more in common than their differences, and really their only difference is their age, and how much we have to learn from each other. I mean, I think, I have a ladies' dinner. I used to do it once a month. Now I just do it in the summer times a couple of times. And I have people from the age of in their 20s to in their 90s. And what a rich celebration of women that is, that I mean, we just gather and learn from each other. And we help each other out. I mean, the older generation many times can put things in perspective, and the younger generation can provide new and crazy, fresh ideas that we might not be thinking of. And to bring that energy together is so important, not just in the workplace, which I know a lot of people are talking about that, but just in general, like we need to start bringing people together. I mean, people are so isolated right now, especially young people and older adults, I think, are the two most isolated groups of people. And one of the Surgeon General said something about the isolation epidemic, and how that's just as dangerous as smoking cigarettes. Imagine that.
Isn't it crazy?
It's crazy when you think of it. But bringing people together, and again, it's that sense of purpose because they feel like they're together and doing something. I think it's so vitally important. So that fuels my work. Everything that I do has some kind of an intergenerational twist to it in some way.
Mm, I love that about the work that you do. So getting back to this thing, the thing that I noticed in Lives Well Lived around amongst all the people that seem to be talking about curiosity and purpose, I just wonder what role does curiosity play in your creative process?
Well, I mean, I think if I wasn't curious, I wouldn't have been a filmmaker, right?
Right?
I mean, I picked up once digital cameras could shoot video. I thought, well, I think I'll shoot some video of my grandma in the kitchen cooking, because she was a good cook and never wrote a recipe down. And I had to be curious to do that and to want to know more and to ask the questions. And I think that in filmmaking, especially documentary filmmaking, that curiosity is what keeps me wanting to do more films and wanting to learn more. I'm curious about people's stories, and I'm curious about how can I bring that to life, and how can I, make everyone's story really interesting. And I firmly believe the more personal the story, the more universal the message becomes. So, you have a very personal story about Alan in the Jollytologist, and he talks about his loss of his wife and how he overcame that. Very personal, but so many people can relate to that. And so my curiosity is, how can I transform that story into a way that's relatable to people, that they'll take something away from it and maybe make their life a little bit better.
Oh, I love that. Are there more risks that you're willing to take now than you were earlier in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm lucky because I had a great career as a teacher, an educator, professor at the university, which I loved and adored. And I have a pension. So any of the work that I do right now, I self-fund it. I mean, we're collecting donations for the Jollytologist, but to get it off the ground, if I believe in something, I go at it full force, and I can afford to do that. Not everyone has that luxury. And I think one of the lessons that I have also learned, which is so important, and I didn't know this when I was younger, is that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And I have learned that if I really want to do a project and I don't know how to do it, but I have the idea, I'm not afraid to ask other people for help to get it done. And so I now have a really good team that I work with. I couldn't do the work that I do without having a really good team. And so I think that that has become um, I mean, I'm really good at putting people together. So that's been a strength, and that's become something that I have learned to rely on rather than say, oh no, I'll do it all myself. Which I think when we're younger, we feel like if we tell anyone that we don't know how to do something, that's a weakness. And in fact, I think I've learned that that's a sign of strength to be able to
Sky,
admit
you're
that.
smarter than me. I'm still learning. I'm still learning that. Oh my gosh. It's so funny because I do everything on this podcast myself. And part of that's a function of economics, I
Right.
just can't afford to hire somebody, but I am learning and I'm going on 6 years and you know how you can choose a word of the year or
Yeah.
whatever. That first year, my word was help.
Mm,
And the idea being that I wanted it to go both ways. I wanted to remember to ask for help, but I also wanted to remember to make this podcast helpful for other people. So I could see that going both ways because it's hard sometimes to ask for help. I find it to
yep.
be tremendously difficult. So good for you for being able to bust through that. I'm still working on that.
Well, that doesn't mean that I don't still do a lot of things myself. That is, I still am very hands-on.
Right.
But I realize to scale what I'm doing. I mean, I'm working on 3 films at the moment, trying to get them out there in the world, trying to get PBS
Yeah,
sponsorship.
you're blowing my mind, lady, really.
Yeah, I have an impact producer. I have a fantastic editor that we work back and forth with. I hire really good interns that, I mean, I think if you treat people well, they really want, and you're working on a project that's meaningful, people want to help you and they want to say, what can we do to make this easier, to take some of the burden off of what you're doing? I think, my job now is to learn how to be a good director and how to tell people, this is what I need you to do. And again, to ask for the help and be specific about it. What do you really need? So, it was a good lesson to learn. It took a lot of years, so don't worry. You still get some time.
I still got to, hopefully I still got time. Um, do, does, do you find that you've got or feel more creative freedom?
I always think I felt like I had creative freedom because I was never, I'm a bit of a different filmmaker because I have self-funded my films and I've never been beholden to anyone to make a film
Mm,
in a particular way. So I've really been able to do the creative process in a way that I appreciate and that feels right for me. In fact, when I was working on Lives Well Lived, I did a sneak preview of the film. And I realized it just wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. And I took it and re-edited it for a year before I released it and made it the way that I wanted it to be. And we did a similar thing with the Jollytologist where we did a sneak preview in-person screening because I think that's really important to do it in person and feel what it's like with an audience. You're watching it on your little tiny screen, but you want to see if, well, are people laughing when you think they're going to laugh? Or are they, holding their breath at the moment you think that they're, these moments, right? And And then I always give out feedback forms because I think it's really important to listen to feedback from other people. Some of it resonates and some of it you just realize it's not going to work. But we're reworking the Jollytologist film and we're going to do a virtual screening of it in April. But, it's with having some of that feedback and taking that in. And every time that we redo something, it gets better. But I'm not beholden to anyone. I get to decide, okay. I know that with the audience, these are some places that I needed to change, and I don't have to worry about somebody that funded the film saying, no, 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 we want it to be this way. And I think that's a much better way to work for me at least. I get to be my own boss. So that's pretty cool.
That is the ultimate and cool as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you hope people feel after watching The Jollytologist?
Well, I hope that they feel uplifted, and I hope that they realize that if they're going through a really difficult time, that maybe, a little bit of laughter and humor can help them get through that moment. And I also hope that they don't feel like they're alone, because I think that a lot of times when we're going through really challenging times, we might feel very isolated and very alone, and it's harder to reach out, I think, in those moments, and I think that seeing a film like this maybe will resonate with somebody, especially if they've lost someone or they're going through something really traumatic. To know that you're not alone, that other people are going through something similar, I think is really important. And to see how somebody got through that moment, like what and how long did it take? It's not going to be overnight, but I think that seeing that progression, seeing that story sometimes helps people get through those moments. So that's what I hope. But I think mostly people will leave feeling pretty uplifted.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And I can't wait to see what you do because having seen the sneak peek of what the film is at this point before you make adjustments and changes and all that, I can't wait to see like the next version because it's kind of like I feel so honored that I got to see a sneak peek of what it is now, this first cut, and love that it's a process, that it's not just doing this podcast. I'm like, okay, it's every week. It's like do it and get it out there, right?
Yeah.
And done is better than perfect,
Yeah.
sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have. Oh, but it is what it is. And
Mhm.
what a gift to be able to do that in-person screening and see people's reactions. Because can I tell you, like, I send these things out into the world and I don't know how it's landing for people. And, what a
Yeah.
cool thing to learn about your process, just
Yeah.
how to put a documentary film together. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is really nice is there's nothing that beats being in a theater with other people and feeling the energy of a particular moment and the laughter that's contagious. And I just uh it's lovely to see things at home and lovely to do things virtually, but there is a beauty in that shared experience that I think, well, we all missed it during the pandemic. And now that we have it back, I hope that we will support our local, especially art house theaters, and go back into the theaters and be watching movies together because there is something about that that's really special that can't be replicated at home.
Truth. Truth. I think more and more we're going to be wanting those in-person experiences. I mean, just,
Hmm.
thinking about AI and not ever knowing if what you're looking at is real anymore.
Exactly.
That's only going to get more and more true. And
Hmm.
I think we're going to be looking for that shared experience with people, whether it is getting together to watch a movie or getting together for other reasons and storytelling. And I'd like to think that theater is going to have a massive resurgence because it's
I
got
hope
that
so.
tight wire feeling, the tightrope feeling of, oh, this is live. Is
Right.
everything going to be okay? Yeah. I
Hmm.
wonder, uh, just going back to that idea that I can't shake in I feel like the timing of this film is so important because everything does feel so heavy in the world. And I just wonder, in a divided world like we're living in right now, do you think that storytelling can actually create empathy?
I do because I think when you know somebody's story, and I see this all the time with the Lives Will Live Generations project, which is also bringing generations together. But ageism and breaking down the stereotypes of ageism, but any ism is because we don't know somebody from the other group. So the more that we learn about the other, they become less the other and they just become a human being and they become somebody that maybe you're empathetic to when you know the story behind those people. And so I think that is, or that group of people, right? You stop thinking of them as a group of people and you start thinking them as a human being. And that's what I hope that we do more of. I mean, this is a very divided moment in our country and in the world, really. And the more that we know each other on a human level, the better the world will be because it's really easy to say, oh, those people, and a lot more difficult when you know somebody that is in that group of those people. All of a sudden, that ism goes away. And so I think storytelling has a really important impact in terms of getting people, bringing people together, and the conversations that you can have around telling a story. So you show a movie or a film and then you have a conversation afterwards, and that
Mm.
dialogue afterwards is can be equally if not more important than the film itself. Maybe the film just sparks that conversation. I know that's for Lives Well Lived, we show the film to older adults and to students, and that's what sparks the conversation between those two groups. And so I think that it really, film and media like that can be used in such a positive way to break down those stereotypes.
Yeah. From your mouth to God's ears or whatever that is. Yeah,
My
yes,
grandmother
yes.
used to say that all the time. Yeah, indeed.
How can people find you? And is there anywhere that people can see Lives Well Lived right now
Yeah.
or your other project? What is the
And that's what's
Mochi?
behind me is mochi right now.
Right. I
So
love that
yeah,
background.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I have my website for all of my projects is skybergmanproductions.com. And I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. And it's the Lives Well Lived is available on Canopy, iTunes, Amazon. And if you go onto the skybergmanproductions.com website, it has links to all of them. The companion book's available on Amazon, and I have the Mochi movie, which you can find a link to on that as well, which is about the Japanese tradition of making mochi to bring in the new year. But it's also really about the Japanese American experience as told through this mochi making ceremony. And I was lucky enough to interview George Takei, the legendary actor from Star Trek, about his experience because his best childhood memory, he was incarcerated during World War II because he's Japanese American, but his best childhood memory was making mochi in the camp. So that it's a really amazing story. And then the other film that I'm working on right now is called The Primetime Band, which is about a community band made up of about 75 people that are mostly in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, who perform. They rehearse every Tuesday night and then perform throughout Santa Barbara County. And many of them are part of a group called the Music Van that goes into third grade classrooms with quite literally a van full of instruments and introduces instruments to 8-year-olds for the first time. And it's, again, that intergenerational twist on things, but it's also about music being so important as we are older and that community spirit and having that sense of purpose. All it's kind of like Lives Will Live, but with music. So it's pretty fun. But all of that is on my main website. You can see links and trailers to everything from there.
That is so fantastic. I love the way you think, Sky. I love
Thanks.
all the topics that end up becoming part of the storytelling that you want to do. It just is, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna keep watching you. I'm gonna keep my eye on you, girl.
Well, one good story leads to the next,
Thank you so
Indeed.
much for being with me today.
You bet. It's been a
I
pleasure.
love
Thank
it.
you so much.
For those of you watching or listening, I just keep thinking that our most meaningful work might not happen in the timeline that we expected. Sky had a whole other career before she launched into doing documentary film work. And that's something that I hope that we all can hold on to and consider as a possibility for our lives, that this, where we are now may not be the end all. And If this conversation encouraged you, leave a comment. Tell me what your third act might look like. I'd genuinely love to hear. And don't forget to subscribe so you can catch the companion conversation with Allen Klein that already is out in the world. And you'll get more stories about living fully at any age. So, bonus. Until next time, thank you so much for being here and bloom like you mean it.